الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وسارعوا إلى مغفرة من ربكم وجنة عرضها السماوات والأرض أعدت للمتقين الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. والذين إذا فعلوا فاحشة أو ظلموا أنفسهم ذكروا الله فاستغفروا لذنوبهم ومن يغفر الذنوب إلا الله ولم يصروا على ما فعلوا وهم يعلمون أولئك جزاؤهم مغفرة من ربهم وجنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ونعم أجر العاملين. قد خلت من قبلكم سنن فسيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين. هذا بيان للناس وهدى وموعظة للمتقين. ولا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. إن يمسسكم قرح فقد مس القوم قرح مثله وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس وليعلم الله الذين آمنوا ويتخذ منكم شهداء والله لا يحب الظالمين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله وآله الأطهار على رسول الله وآله الأطهار.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم. First and foremost, I give you condolences on the Shahadat of Imam Musa-e-Kadhim alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Saturday 25th of January 2025, eve of 25th of Rajab 1446. The announcements are as follows. You are kindly requested to keep all your belongings alongside you as well as your mobile phone off to avoid any distractions during the program. Further to this, inshallah, Sunday the 26th of January, Salatul Fajr will be prayed at 7 a.m., followed by a lecture and breakfast niyaz. Dementia coffee mornings will take place from 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. here at Hujjat Stanmore. Further details will be on the website. There'll also be a majlis at Brookwood Cemetery at 11 a.m. sharp. The Shahadat Eve of Hazrat Abu Talib alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, will begin at 4:53 p.m. with Salatul Maghribain and lecture by Dr. Ihsan Rangia. Monday 27th of January is Mi'raj and Roza Behzat. Program will start at 8 p.m. with recitation of the Holy Quran and lecture by our very own Shaykh Anwar Jaffer. The Hujjat SEND community, in collaboration with Amanati and Al-Hadi Youth and Gains with Gavinci, send families to a special iftar from 4:30 p.m. on Saturday the 1st of March at Hujjat Harefield. Join us for children's activities, guest speakers, for parents and carers, a delicious iftar, and Shahr Ramadan du'as and reflections. Parents and carers will have the chance to talk about the blessings and challenges of navigating Shahr Ramadan as a SCND family. Please sign up on the Hujjat website. The Hujjat Spiritual Strategy Team needs your help to help with the objective of developing a spiritual vision for the community. And under the guidance of Shaykh Anwar Jaffer, Shaykh Mehdi Abdullah, and other senior scholars, the Spiritual Strategy Team has launched a community-wide survey. The survey aims to understand the current state of the community and identify its wants and needs. Your input is invaluable and will play a crucial role in shaping the long-term spiritual strategy for Hujjat that will benefit both present and future generations. The survey link is live and can be accessed via www.hujj.at/SST. Everyone is encouraged to take a few minutes to complete it. The SST team thanks you for all your valuable feedback, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He rewards you for supporting the development of a stronger, united, and spiritual future of Hujjat. Those who are interested in reciting du'as and ziyarat or Quran in the main hall, please email recite@hujjat.org. Finally, a humble request from the Secretariat and the volunteers. Tabarruk Niyaz will not be served unless you are all seated, as there has been a lot of spillages on the newly laid carpets. Ahsant, thank you for your consideration. We please now welcome Winazan Kudamani for Martyrdom with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Hey Musa-e-Kadhim, hey Musa-e-Kadhim, hey Musa-e-Kadhim, ek gareebul watan कैद में मर गया एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया पुल पे बगदाद के है जनाज़ा रखा एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया खून आँखों से अपनी बहाते हुए हथकड़ी बेड़ियाँ तोक पहने हुए कैद सजाद की याद करता हुआ एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, जिसके 18 बेटे जवां साल थे, उसकी मैयत को मजदूर ले कर चले, बैन करती चली, बैन करती चली, साथ में सैयदा एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया। ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, अजनबी शहर है दूर अहले वतन, तेरे बाबा को दे कौन गुस्लो कफन, आओ जल्दी वतन, आओ जल्दी वतन से इमाम रज़ा एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया। ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, सब्र कर ना है सुगरा को जैसा तुझे, रास्ता देखना बाप का छोड़ दे, जाके मासूमाए, जाके मासूमाए कुम से कह दे हवा एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया। ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, लाश पर भी नहीं रोने वाला कोई, वारिसे दीन की है ये बेवारिसी, ढूंढती है कज़ा, ढूंढती है कज़ा, दफन कर कए निजा एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया। ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, ए मूसा-ए काज़िम, बैन करते तकल्लुम सभी आ गए, करबला से मदीना से और शाम से, 14 बरसों का कैदी, 14 बरसों का कैदी है रिहा हो गया एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया। पुल पे बगदाद के, पुल पे बगदाद के है जनाज़ा रखा एक गरीबुल वतन कैद में मर गया। मोहम्मद बाल मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु।
Brothers, can I request you all to please move as far forward with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajhum. Inshallah, if I could please welcome Shaykh Anwar Jaffer with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع لذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أم يحسدون الناس على ما آتاهم الله من فضله آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم Respected elders, brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First, I have to apologize. My voice is not cooperating with me today, so I hope you have the patience to bear with me tonight, inshallah. When we examine the life of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. What's interesting and quite phenomenal with regards to his life is that whenever he interacted with the people around him, whether it be a friend, whether it be a foe, whether it be a fellow scholar, there was always this idea or this concept of jadibiyya that was taking place. He had this power of attracting the people around him. What's even more beautiful is that however in whichever way he reacted, despite the different circumstances that he was placed in, the way he reacted was so specific that it directly or indirectly attracted the people towards him. Whether it was him directly interacting with the people around him or him directly interacting with Allah, you found that people were naturally inclined towards him. They were now following him. They were attracted to what he represented. So however the Imam reacted given the different circumstances and scenarios he was placed in, the end outcome was always the same, that the people loved him, that the people were attracted to the message that he presented or represented. What this tells us is that in our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have the final few days of Rajab. We are now entering the month of Sha'ban, and of course, which will then enter towards the month of Ramadan. Our goal, primary objective, is to rekindle this relationship that we have with Allah. And we can only do so by establishing a firm intention within our heart that I want to establish a relationship with Allah. Without that intention being there, despite how much signs and how much experiences you go through in life, if that blockade is there and you have no desire to connect with Allah, one will not be able to connect with Allah. So every day when we stand in salah and say, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, Ya Allah, this heart, fill it with hidayah, fill it with iman. If we don't have the intention to work on ourselves, to increase in our hidayah, these words merely become words. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. It's a dua. Ya Allah, guide me to the one true path. But if the intention is not there, however many signs that are brought towards us, we will not pay heed towards them. We become like those that have been characterized within the Holy Quran. They see, but they cannot see. They hear, but they cannot hear. We pray to Allah to cleanse our hearts so that we are able to identify the truth, inshallah. There are 3 case studies that I want to focus on in the life of the Imam alayhi salam. The first is with regards to a man who came towards him in the city of Medina. Now this man, they say, according to the sources, he was one of the grandchildren or from the lineage of the Khulafa or from the Sahaba of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Whenever he would see Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, there would be, Allahumma salli ala, there would be a level of abuse that was directed towards the Imam alayhi salam. This person in particular would abuse Ali alayhi salam. Remember, this was during the time when the cursing of the Imam alayhi salam was still very much active within the society. It took quite a while before that was made forbidden within the Muslim land. So this person would actively abuse and give la'na on Imam Ali alayhi salam. Now the companions that were there around the Imam alayhi salam, when they heard this man speaking and engaging in such rhetoric, they came to the Imam, they said, you give us the order, we will go and we will strike him. City of Medina, they're known to be the followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. If not active Shias, they respected the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. The Imam says, stay back. Don't do anything, let me deal with him. So the Imam inquired, where does this person live? They said, look, we don't know where this person lives, but we know that he has a farmland in the outskirts of Medina. Every day at this specific time, he's known to be there. So the Imam goes to that land at that specific time. He sees the person working on his land. When the person sees the Imam coming towards him from afar, he's disappointed. What is he doing here? The Imam approaches him. The man turns to the Imam, he says to the Imam that you have entered a territory, you have no permission to come into this land. Leave, get out. The Imam responds very kindly, gets off his mount. He says to the man, I have a few questions and then I'll leave. Man says, what is it? He says, how much did you invest in this land? He says, 100 dinar. He says, how much do you expect to earn from this land this year alone? He says, 200 dinars. The Imam takes out a pouch from his cloak, gives it to the man. He says, there's 300 dinar in there, 100 for your land, 200 from the profits that you're expecting. I'm not buying this land from you. Keep this money for yourself. Keep this land to yourself. Use this wealth for your family. The Imam then mounts his ride and he goes back to the city of Medina. The companions are narrating this now. They say that very soon this man came running to the masjid of the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. Immediately fell onto his knees and he began crying and he was wailing that all this time I've been abusing you and this is how you respond back to me. You respond in kindness. وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. This is the principle that was very much established in the life of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. That those who suppress their anger, they are able to channel their angers effectively. And beyond that, they overlook the mistakes of others. The Imam recognizes that this man is acting and behaving according to his jahala. There is knowledge that he doesn't have. And I can't blame him for behaving based on the knowledge that he doesn't have. The Imam shows him love. The Imam shows him compassion. The Imam shows him mercy. The man then becomes the follower of the Imam. The power of attractiveness, al-jadibiyya, that even the hardest of enemies were able to understand the value that the Imam stood for. And they were attracted to his message. The man then calls out, he says, Allahu a'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalata. Indeed, Allah is most knowing where He places His message. That despite all of the different authorities that I see in front of me who represent ad-Din al-Islam, you are very much distinguished in comparison to all of them. So this is the first example, where there was a person who interacted with the Imam, he experienced the mercy of the Imam, he was attracted to the Imam. But then you have another example, where people interacted with the Imam, again, not with the best of intentions, abusive to a level. They witnessed the mercy, the knowledge of the Imam alayhi salam, but they were very stubborn. And they refused to submit to the message that the Imam was representing. And this was from the scholars. Now, if we go back in history, we understand that during the time of Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, there were many different variations of sects that emerged. The helm of the Abbasid was during Harun al-Rashid. This was the peak of the Abbasid power. And in this stage, what he did was he allowed freedom of thought and freedom of expression, which was then even more exacerbated during the time of Ma'mun al-Abbasi, during the time of the 8th Holy Imam. Before this time, you had different sects, but they weren't substantially established within society. There were pockets of people with different ideologies, different viewpoints. But during the Abbasids, It was very much open for everyone to discuss anything and everything freely. So in this period alone, you had the Zoroastrians, you had the Mu'tazilites, you had, for example, the movement of Abu Shakir al-Daysani, the atheistic movement that caught wave. You had, for example, the Jabriya, the Mufawwidha, the Qadriya, all of these different sects began to emerge. The ayah of the Holy Quran, what does it say? وَأَتَسِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Do not divide yourselves. But this division took place. If you refer to the works of Dr. Taha Hussein, the famous Egyptian scholar, who passed away in the early 70s, he says that during the time of Ma'mun, because this freedom of expression was so ripe within the Muslim Ummah, there were at least 90 different sects that emerged. 90 factions within the Muslim Ummah. All of them had their own interpretations of what Tawheed was. All of them had their own interpretations on all of the intricate details of ad-Din al-Islam. They were constantly debating with each other. People ask the question, why is it that we as a madhab are so Imam-centric and we're not Tawheed-centric? One of the answers to this is because in order for us to understand Tawheed, you refer to the books of history, even the books of theology. You have books of theology that are authored by scholars from so many different backgrounds. And they give you a glimpse of what they think Tawheed is. But when we focus our attention on the A'immat al-Athar, we have confidence in their message, which they can then guide us to understand what Tawheed truly is. So all of these different factions began to emerge during the time of the Imam alayhi salam. Now, the hukuma of the time, what they did was they capitalized on the scholars. So they got the muftis, they got the judges, they got all of the different scholars, they got, for example, the transmitters of ahadith, and they encouraged them, go and debate with the Imam. So when you look at all of the debates that were held by the Imam alayhi salam, they were never initiated by the Imam. These scholars, they would come to the Imam and they would debate. And in some of these narrations, or some of these debates, the introduction were quite rude. How they would initiate these debates, they were quite rude. Without the use of profanity, without cursing the Imam, without using abusive language, how were they rude? By the questions they asked and the style that they asked in. And beyond that, how they reacted when the Imam gave them the responses. So you have, for example, you have one by the name of Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, one of the famous companions of al-Nu'man. He says, I was accompanying Nu'man in Medina. Nu'man decided to go visit the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. He says, when we came to the house of the Imam alayhi salam, we saw a young man, a young boy, in reference to? Who's listening? Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. Ahsad. It says, we saw this young man. Nu'man observed that the people around him were venerating him, honoring him, respecting him. He says, this is a young boy. He doesn't deserve this level of respect. Muhammad narrates, he says that Nu'man turned to me and he said to me, watch how I embarrass this young man. He says, no, please don't. Because these are from the lineage of the household of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Infused with knowledge. I fear that in the end, you will be the one who is embarrassed. He said, it's not going to happen. So Nu'man approaches the Imam alayhi salam, young boy. He says, boy, I have a question for you. In your city, Nu'man wasn't from Medina, he was from Kufa. He says, in your city, where does one relieve themselves? It's a very strange question to ask. Why would someone ask that question to a boy? It was a question that was phrased, it was asked to mock the Imam alayhi salam. But then the Imam responds with utmost seriousness. This is where the akhlaq comes in. The Imam doesn't shun him away to say that you've asked a useless question. The Imam responds with absolute seriousness. He said, you've asked me a question, you deserve a serious answer from me. He says that when one wishes to relieve themselves, they must isolate themselves from everyone. Remember, in those times, they didn't have toilets or multiple toilets in households the way we have today. They used to have public bathhouses, public toilets. This is where they would go and relieve themselves. It says if a person is unable, then they would at least have to isolate themselves from the people. stand behind a wall, hide themselves behind a wall so that their neighbors cannot see them. They cannot go to a tree which bears fruits, or where the fruits drop from the tree, or next to a stream. Refrain from these places, do not face the Qibla, do not have one's back towards the Qibla. When the Imam responds in such a serious way, Nu'man realizes there's something different about this boy. He says, very well, I have another question for you. Now the conversation transforms and it becomes more of a serious theological, philosophical conversation. He says, my question for you is, when a person commits a sin, who is responsible for that sin? Is it Allah? Is it the person? Or are Allah and the person both shared partners in committing the sin? The Imam responds with absolute seriousness again. He says, we have to build the foundations first. Are you a Muslim or are you a kafir? He says, I'm a Muslim. He says, good. Now we can develop the answer. As a Muslim, we believe that Allah is al-Hakim. We believe that Allah is adil, that He is just and He is wise. If we say that Allah is responsible for people committing a sin, then why would Allah hold that person accountable on the Day of Judgment? Because that would negate His justice. And if we negate His justice, the whole fabrics of Tawheed collapses. He says the second argument, if we say that Allah is a shared partner with the human being in committing a sin, again, why would Allah hold the individual accountable without holding Himself accountable? Which leaves the third probability intact, which is that the person is responsible for the sins that he commits, based on his own free will, and this is designed through the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, you had many of the debates. If you refer to, for example, our own source, Allama Tabrasi's Al-Ihtijaj, you have a whole chapter on the debates of Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. Go read. And many of these debates, because they were coming from scholars, the questions were very intricate, complex, complicated. It takes sessions to understand the meanings and the words of the Imam alayhi salam at that philosophical, theological level. Or for example, refer to the books of Shahristani. He has a whole chapter in his book, Al-Milal wal-Nihal, the debates of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. When we come across these stories where people actively engaged with the Imam, did they benefit from the Imam after debating with the Imam? No. It did not benefit them in any way whatsoever. You find Nu'man established his own school. He saw himself to be contemporaneous with the Imam alayhi salam. And he carried on with his own school and his own teachings, despite knowing the truth and being shown the truth. In our journey, in wanting to develop our connection with Allah, wanting to find the truth, if at times we find ourselves to be confused, Ya Allah, I am confronted with so many different opinions, I'm not sure which of these opinions is correct. Open your heart to Allah and ask Allah to guide you. If that intention is not there, you'll be swimming in the pools of ambiguity and confusion. Allah guides whom He wishes. And sometimes that manifestation of guidance comes from unexpected areas. Allah guides whom He wishes. When you open your heart and you ask Allah for guidance, Allah will show you the path. It may take a very long time for you to come to an answer that is satisfactory. Many a times we're confronted with deep theological, philosophical questions. And it's very easy to ask a question, but it's very hard to come up with an answer, or to find an answer that is satisfactory. And if you see yourself in that position, have the patience to carry on being in that journey. Eventually, Allah will lead you to the answer. Eventually. When you do come across the answer, or to the answer, when you do come across to the answer, have the confidence to turn to Allah and say, Ya Allah, I have found the truth. Allow this truth to manifest in my life practically, where your actions now are molded by the truth that you've come across. There's a very interesting story of a professor, passed away. Professor Mustafa Mahmoud has a very interesting story. He says, he has a clip on YouTube. He speaks about his experience when he was younger. He says that when I grew up, in my household, there was no affinity to religion. There was no affinity to God. There was an absolute isolation from religion altogether. He says, but I came across a very interesting experience, and I cannot understand where this experience came from, but it was life-changing for me. He says, I was very much materialistic and scientific in my approach. And what that means is that nothing exists except the physical world. So if you're talking about alim al-ghayb, he says none of that was part of my belief system. Heaven, hell, angel, jinn, none of it was part of my belief system. He says, I used to be an academic, so I would sleep late and I would wake up late. He says, early in the morning, whilst I'm sleeping, the phone rings. He says, I picked up the phone. It was a friend of mine. He says, I can't remember the conversation much. It was groggy, early in the morning. I'm still half asleep. He says, the conversation ended. I put the phone down. I went back to sleep. He said, I had a dream. And I saw my friend in my dream, and he was walking down this particular road. He mentions the name of the road. And he had his friend with him as well. Shawki Abdul Hakim, I believe his name was. He says he was a columnist. He used to work for this paper. And they were both walking in the street, and they were talking about an academic paper or a book, and they were critiquing it in English. He was an Arab himself. So he said they were speaking in a foreign language. The foreign language was English. He says, I woke up like usual. It was a dream. Because I had a dream of my friend, I called him. And when I called him, I said to him that I saw you in my dream. He says, really? What did you dream about? He said, I dreamt that you and Shawki were walking down the street and you were talking about this subject, critiquing this book, and you were talking in English. He says, I don't know what happened, but my friend dropped the phone in his end. And then he got back to me and he said that what you said transpired. That's exactly what happened. We were walking down this road, going to a bookshop to pick up a book. And this is the conversation that we were having whilst we were walking. He said that experience, he said it's not hujjah on any of us. This person saw a dream, so what? But for this person, Dr. Mustafa Mahmoud, it was hujjah on him. Because he was able to see something, a glimpse of alim al-ghayb, which was sufficient for him to transform his entire life. He said, I didn't come to the religion of Islam immediately. What it did was it piqued my interest to this supernatural order that exists. Because nothing in the material realm can explain what happened to me. He says, that's for sure. So I got interested in yoga, I got interested in meditation, reflection, all of these different things. He says, eventually in my journey, I came across an Indian ambassador. He said to me, there is a book, you need to get hold of this book. Concentration and meditation. He said, you'll find a copy perhaps in London. He says, I took a flight to London. I went to all of the different types of bookstores until I was able to find this book. It was a very old manuscript and I bought it. He said, I began to follow all of the prescriptions that were mentioned in this book. But I couldn't access what happened to me earlier on. Eventually in his life, he embraces the religion of Islam. Sometimes guidance is given by Allah in very unconventional ways. And when it happens, you find that naturally people are pulled towards the religion of Islam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The third example in the life of the Imam alayhi salam was the circumstances that he lived under oppression. As I mentioned, Harun al-Rashid's caliphate was the peak of the Abbasid rule. And it was able to solidify his rulership in different stages. The final stage was to confront his enemies, who were the Shi'as, the Alawites. So there was a lot of abuse and torture and brutality that was directed towards the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt. To the extent that the Shi'as had to come and invent different ways to transmit the knowledge of the Imam alayhi salam without mentioning his name directly. So for example, in our narrations, you'll find that there is a chain of narrators, and they report it from, for example, the righteous servant. Who is this righteous servant? This was a title that was given to Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. Because they were so afraid of using his actual name, they would refer to him through titles, the righteous servant or the scholar. Or for example, the righteous servant, the scholar, and there are some other titles that were given to indicate that this report is being narrated from the Imam alayhi salam. At times, when you speak about the daughter of the Imam alayhi salam, Hazrat Ma'sooma salamullahi alayha, the question arises with regards to her life. When she passed away, she was single, she was not married, roughly around the age of 28, which is very odd for a woman in her 28, in her late 20s to not be married in that society. Why didn't she marry? It wasn't because she wasn't able to find a suitable spouse. It was because no one wanted to be a part of that family. For that reason, no one had any intentions of marrying Bibi Fatima Ma'sooma alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So the level of abuse and brutality that was there directed to the Shi'as, and more specifically the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, it was overwhelming. But never did that sway the Imam to compromise on his principles and on his values. He remained established, very much firm and established, to the extent that people sought sanctuary from him. So you look at the example, Ma'mun al-Abbasi, the son of Harun al-Rashid, narrates this event. He says, my father had this inferiority complex towards Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. It's ajib. The level of oppression that the Imam was under. On the other hand, you have Harun al-Rashid, who is the king of the Muslim empire. He had an inferiority complex towards Imam alayhi salam. He says, we were in Mecca. We went for Hajj, we were in Mecca, we pitched a tent. People would come and visit us. He says, one day the Imam came towards us. So as he stood outside of the tent, the guards, they came and they told my father, Harun, that the Imam has arrived. They say, before the Imam even enters the tent, my father stands from his seat. He says, that's ajib, because my father does not do that for anyone. The Imam enters the presence of Harun. Harun reciprocates with absolute humility and kindness and politeness. Embraces him, sits next to him, speaks to him with honor, with veneration, with kindness, with respect. He says, this was very strange for me to witness because my father does not speak like this or behave like this with anyone. He says, as the conversation ended, when the Imam got up from his seat, Harun, my father, got up as well. Ajib, again, my father doesn't do this for anyone else. The Imam then leaves. They say Ma'mun, when he gave the crown, when he made Imam al-Rada alayhi salam the crown prince, the vice president, so to speak, there was a lot of critique towards him. They challenged him. They said, you have too much love for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Whereas your fathers and your forefathers, they bore arms against the Ahlul Bayt. There was a lot of killing and bloodshed towards them, but you're showing too much love towards them. Ma'mun used to respond. He says, I have learned this from my father Harun. And then he would narrate this incident. So he says that as the Imam left, I turned to my father and I said to him, the way you treated him is very much different to how you treat others. He responds, my son Ma'mun, what can I say to you? The truth is the truth. Whether you like it or not, the truth is one and the same. He is more deserving to the seat than I am. He says, I am the Imam in the apparent, and I have established my Imamah through dominance and force, whereas he has established his Imamah through his essence. I recognize that. So Ma'mun says to him, then why don't you transfer the caliphate to him? He says, my son, listen to me. I hope you're not insane. If you dispute with me over this issue, I will not hesitate to kill you. Even if the Prophet, the Messenger of Allah, was to dispute with me over this issue, I would strangle him. As the Imam is leaving, Harun quickly turns to his messengers, his servants, and he says to them, give him $200, catch up to him and give him 200 dinars, 200 dinars, quickly. So Ma'mun turns to his father again. He says, listen, why 200? He has many children. The Imam had many children. He says 200 dinars is pocket change. With regards to all of the singers and the dancers that you employ, you give them tens and thousands. And you give the Imam 200, your own cousin? He says, how much should I give him? He says, give him 100,000. He says, my son, if I give him 100,000 dinars today, I fear that 100,000 swords will be against me tomorrow. He says, I have to keep him in a position where he is in destitute, he is in poverty. That's how we have control over him. That was the mindset that Harun was operating under. And yet at the end of the day, he had this inferiority complex. Why? Because the Imam was a principled individual. That despite the harsh conditions, the Imam never wavered and compromised on his values and on his principles. Allah was forefront in his minds. Everything was to do in the service of Allah. There's one particular hadith where he establishes this very clearly. The Imam says to his companion, he says, أَبْلِغْ خَيْرًا وَقُلْ خَيْرًا. Convey the truth and say the truth. وَلَا تَكُنْ إِمَّعَةً. وَلَا تَكُنْ إِمَّعَةً. And do not be a amma. So the narrator, the companion, he responds. He says, what do you mean by this? Do not be an am. Very specific words that are being used by the Imam alayhi salam. He says, when I say do not be amongst the imma'a, it means that you do not follow the majority. When you look at all of the people in society, do not embrace their values and their principles. Because your values and your principles are extracted from the Quran, likewise the message of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. In other words, you as a Muslim, when you identify yourself as a Muslim, you have created a barrier around you. You have standards, you have boundaries. That whatever action you commit, whatever words you speak of, it is to be in line with the Quran and the message of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That is what forms our worldview. When you refer to the Quran does not commend the majority. وَلَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. The majority do not use their aql. Allah doesn't commend the majority. On the contrary, وَالْعَصْرَ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Majority of mankind are in loss. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُودٌ. Majority of insan are ungrateful towards the blessings that have been given to them. There is this constant reverberation of highlighting that there is a minority within the majority who are believers, who are constantly in line with the message and what Allah wants from them. So as Muslims, our values are dictated by the Quran as well as the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. The criteria for my actions is not what the majority think. It is what the Quran says and what the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam says. The Sharia is extracted from the Quran, likewise the message of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That is what forms what our values are. Even if the entirety of humanity has abandoned the Sharia, I should be very firm in establishing it very well in my life. That's why the Holy Prophet of Islam mentions, he says, "O my community, if you see Ali ibn Abi Talib in one valley and the rest of you are walking down the second valley, know that the truth is with Ali." There is this idea of minority, that the truth is in the hands of the minority. The truth of values extracted from the majority is not something that is part of the ethos of the Holy Quran. And likewise, one cannot allow the values of Islam be dictated by what the majority think. There is a book that was recently published. The author of the book, Dr. Shabir Akhtar, has written a book, The Quran and the Secular Mind. It's a very powerful title, The Quran and the Secular Mind. And he speaks, he argues, he says that when you approach the religion of Islam or even the Quran, you cannot classify it the way you and I class the modern Judeo-Christianic paradigm. You cannot approach Islam, likewise the Quran, the way modern Judeo-Christianic traditions have been approached. And he gives a reason to this. He says the reason is because modern day Christianity has succumbed itself to what is known as secularism. They are in disguise, they represent what is known as liberal humanism. And what this means is that whenever you approach the discussions of morality and ethics and politics and economics, whenever you speak about theology, you find that modern day Christianity has succumbed to what the majority think and the opinions of the majority. It's a very beautiful aspect or a case study to really observe what Christianity was and what it has become. It's a very powerful lesson for all of us. That today people are leaving Christianity and embracing Islam. Why? Go listen to their testimonies. Amongst them priests even. They are abandoning Christianity to embrace the religion of Islam. One of them openly says, he says that in my observation, the Quran, Islam, what it presents, it is a genuine, real alternative to the secular paradigm, to the secular worldview. It's very strange that you have Christians who are becoming Muslims because they do not want to be part of that system anymore. They are willing to abandon their principles to adopt our principles. And we want to abandon our principles and adopt their principles. The Imam alayhi salam mentions a very powerful philosophy. وَلَا تَكُنْ إِمَّعَةً. Do not follow and extract your values from the opinions of the majority. Harun al-Rashid, there was a lot of sentiments, hatred, jealousy towards the Imam alayhi salam. That whatever the Imam did, there was nothing but goodness and khair in it. So he takes the Imam, he makes the decision that the Imam is to be imprisoned. The narrations say the Imam was in Masjid al-Nabi, praying alongside the grave of the Holy Prophet of Islam. The guards, they entered, they took the Imam, arrested him whilst he was in prayers. And they transported him to the city of Basra. When he was in Basra, he was placed in prison. The leader of the prison, the guard of the prison, Isa, Harun says to Isa, he says, keep an eye on al-Kazim alayhi salam. So he sends spies, go and observe what the Imam is doing. Then the executive order comes in, execute the Imam alayhi salam. Why? Because the Shia secretly, they would come and visit the Imam alayhi salam. So even though the Imam is in isolation, he would still be able to attract his followers. Al-Jadibiyya, the power of attraction that the Imam displayed. So the order is given, execute the Imam. Isa responds back to Harun. He says, listen, I've sent spies to observe what the Imam is doing. I've made it clear to them that the Imam engages in ibadah. Go and listen to what sort of du'as he engages with. The Imam does not say anything against you or me, Harun. He doesn't say anything against you or me, or out of malice against you or me. The Imam doesn't even pray for himself. Rather, he reserves his du'as for his followers, for his community, for the people in his society. If you wish for me to kill him, I won't kill him. Find someone else to do it. Otherwise, I will free him from my prisons. Harun immediately takes the Imam out of Basra and takes him straight to Baghdad. When the Imam is in Baghdad, he's in the prisons of Fadl ibn Rabi. When he's in the prisons of Fadl ibn Rabi, it was his own home. He had a palace and he had a section which was designated to be a prison. That's where the Imam stayed. One day, Fadl ibn Rabi is in the higher levels of his palace, so he's looking down. He had a companion with him. He said to his companion, come, look over there on the ground. What do you see? The companion, he looks, he says, it's just a piece of cloth on the ground. He says, no, look closely. What do you see? He says, I looked closely and I could see a man in sujood. Fadl ibn Rabi himself narrates. He says the Imam alayhi salam was in the state of sujood. He would wake for Salat al-Fajr, be in sujood up to the time of Dhuhr, stand for Dhuhr, be in sujood up to Asr, stand for Asr, be in sujood up to the time of Maghrib. When it was time for Maghrib, he would stand up and immediately begin his Salat al-Maghrib. He wouldn't even go and perform wudu. Meaning what? Meaning that even though the Imam was in sujood, he didn't fall asleep. True or no? He says this was the Imam alayhi salam. Ibadah, that connection with Allah. The Imam is not interacting with anyone. He's merely engaging in ibadah. Fadl ibn Rabi is now attracted to the Imam alayhi salam. The order is given, Ya Fadl, execute the Imam. He says no. To the extent that Harun himself punishes Fadl, flogs him 100 times because he refused to execute the Imam alayhi salam. Then he is taken from the prisons of Fadl ibn Rabi' and he is transported from one prison to another until he reaches the prisons of Sindi. Sindi was brutal, hard-hearted. The amount of torture that was directed towards the Imam alayhi salam, he was placed in a prison where the Imam could not even stand fully. The heavy shackled irons around his wrist and his neck. And this carried on for a long period of time until the order comes in, Ya Sindi, execute the Imam. Sindi was hard-hearted, so he was able to give food to the Imam alayhi salam. He administered the poison. The Imam then consumes the poison. When the Imam consumes the poison, his body now begins to break apart. And towards his final moments, they made fun of him, they humiliated him. In one narration, Sindi gathers 80 from amongst the family, and they came and they began to humiliate the Imam alayhi salam, whilst the Imam was in that phase of leaving this world. When the Imam then leaves this world, they take his body and they place it on the bridge of Baghdad. For 3 days, without ghusl, without dafn, the Imam alayhi salam's body is hanging in the bridge of Baghdad. A message to everyone that whoever dares to stand against the leaders of the time, this is what their outcome will be. But we say to Imam al-Kazim, Ibn Rasulillah, there was one other whose body was abandoned for 3 days. There was one other whose body was abandoned for 3 days. Bishr ibn Hadlam mentions in his lines of poetry, when he quickly enters the city of Medina, he says, Ya ahl al-Yathrib la maqama lakum biha, qutila al-Husayn wa udmu'i midrara, al-jismu minhu bikarbala'in mudarrajun, والرأس على القناة يدار. It says, O people of Medina, there is no sanctity left amongst you. Hussein has been killed, so let your eyes shed tears and let them flow continuously. His body drenched in blood, left and abandoned in the lands of Karbala, and his head being paraded from one city to another. They say after 3 days, Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam returns to Karbala. The Bani Asad, they say, we came towards the plains of Karbala. All we saw were bodies without heads. We could not identify which body belonged to whom. All of a sudden, we saw a young man approach us, and he helped us bury all of the bodies. But there was one body. When he approached this body, he said, do not help me burying this body. It is my wadhifa, my responsibility to bury the body of my father, Abi Abdullah. The Imam digs the grave. Then he lowers the body of Abu Abdullah. Then he places his cheeks on the chest of Abu Abdullah. Then he begins to cry out, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulullah. My father, how the world has become dark after you've left, and how the Akhirah has been illuminated with your presence. Oh my father, Ya Abata, my nights have become sleepless, and my grief has become eternal. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ma'tam al-Husayn.
आई फलक से सदा मूसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब कत्ल हुए बेखता मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब 13 बरस कैद थे और थे बीमार भी तीन दवा बेग़िज़ा मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब कुरमे में बेरहम ने ज़हर हल दिया ज़हर से मारा गया मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब आपके 40 थे एहलो अला लो यतीम लाश पे कोई न था मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब लाशे मुक़द्दस रही जिस्र पे बगदाद के कोई न पुरसा हुआ मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब पुल पे लाशा पड़ा कोई नहीं पूछता है ये इमाम हुदा मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब लाते हैं हम माल जो किसका जनाज़ा है हाय क्या हो गया मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब आई फलक से सदा मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब आई फलक से सदा मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब कत्ल हुए बेखता मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब 13 बरस कैद थे और थे बीमार भी 13 बरस कैद थे और थे बीमार भी 3 दवा बेग़िज़ा मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब आई फलक से सदा मुसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब आई फलक से सदा काज़िम गरीब कत्ल हुए बेखता मुसा आपके 40 थे अहलो अयालो यतीम, आपके 40 थे अहलो अयालो यतीम, लाश पे कोई न था मूसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब। आई फलक से सदा मूसा-ए-काज़िम गरीब, आई फलक से सदा।
हैया अला खैरिल अमल, हैया अला खैरिल अमल, या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन, मिल के नाम है मौला, या हुसैन। मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है। मिलके मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, 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 मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम। सब मिलके नाम है मौला। मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूर। सुन क्या नाम है मौला का जन। बगदाद के कैदी पर, बगदाद के कैदी पर जिंदान भी रोता है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है। माशाल्लाह। इस दर्द ने तुरबत में सजाद को तड़पाया, जिंदा से निकल कर भी आज़ाद न हो पाया, है पहला जनाजा जो, है पहला जनाजा जो जंजीरों में जकड़ा है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूर। जियो मातमी माशाल्लाह। का जनाजा है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर है, मजदूरों के कांधों जनाजा है। जंजीरों को तकती है, शानों को हिलाती है, मैयत को कभी अपनी गोदी में उठाती है। एक हाथ है पहलू पर, एक हाथ है पहलू पर, लगता है कि ज़हरा है, मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूर। माशाल्लाह। काज़िम का जनाजा है, मजदूर। काज़िम जना है। बगदाद के कैदी पर, बगदाद के कैदी पर जिंदान भी रोता है, मजदूरों के। माशाल्लाह। है मजदूर सुन के नाम मौला जर्रे भी लहू रो कर रुदाद सुनाते हैं कदमों के निशान इसके जिंदा में बताते हैं ये नज़्र के आलम में ये नज़्र के आलम में किस तरह से तड़पा है मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है मजदूरों के अजरुकुमुल्लाह माशाल्लाह का जनाजा है मजदूरों के कांधों पर है मजदूरों के कांधों पर जो लोग गुजरते हैं आपस में ये कहते हैं घर वाले तो यसरब में इस कैदी के रहते हैं फिर इसके जनाजे पर ये कौन ज़ईफ़ा है मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है मजदूर जो मातमी है मजदूर जो मातमी का जनाजा है बगदाद के कैदी पर जिंदान भी रोता है मजदूरों के कांधों पर है मजदूरों के कांधों पर है हर रोज ही जाती है वो तुरबत ज़हरा पर जाकर वहाँ कहती है मासूमाए कुम रो कर दादी मेरे बाबा को क्या आपने देखा है मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है मजदूरों के जियो मातमी का जनाजा है मजदूरों के कांधों पर है मजदूरों के जंजीरों को तकती है शानों को हिलाती है मैयत को कभी अपनी गोदी में उठाती है एक हाथ है पहलू पर लगता है ये ज़हरा है मजदूरों के कांधों पर काज़िम का जनाजा है मजदूरों के कांधों पर है मजदूरों जनाजा है मजदूर तू सातवां मुश्किल कुशा नूरे जनाबे सैयदा या मूसा-ए काज़िम मिलके नाम मौला या मूसा-ए काज़िम तू सातवां मुश्किल कुशा नूरे जनाबे सैयदा या मूसा-ए काज़िम या मूसा काज़िम तेरे ताबूत की वो तन्हाई, ना था बेटा गरीब ना भाई, चंद मजदूर आए उजरत पर, लाश रस्ते से तेरी उठवाई, तू सातवां मुश्किल कुशा नूरे जनाबे सैयदा, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम। तेरा बाबा इमाम सादिक है, जिसके दम से है जाफरी सारे, दीनों मजहब सबक इबादत है, हमको साए उसी के दर से मिले, तू सातवां मुश्किल कुशा नूरे जनाबे सैयदा, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम। मिलके या मूसा, माशाल्लाह, काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम। तेरा बेटा इमाम ज़ामिन है, जिसके कब्ज़े में रात है दिन है, वो खुरासान का है शाहज़ादा, हर शिफा उसके दर पे मुमकिन है, तू सातवां मुश्किल कुशा नूरे जनाबे सैयदा, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, माशाल्लाह, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम। काज़िम है नजफ दुश्मनों के नरगे में, करबला सामरा के रस्ते में, बेकफन मोमिनों के लाशें हैं, कुफ्र दाखिल हुआ मदीने में, तू सातवां मुश्किल कुशा नूरे जनाबे सैयदा, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम है, या मूसा-ए काज़िम। तेरे ताबूत की वो तन्हाई, ना था बेटा गरीब ना भाई, चंद मजदूर आए उजरत पर, लाश रस्ते से तेरी उठवाई, तू सातवां मुश्किल कुशा नूरे जनाबे सैयदा, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या नाम मौला सब मिलके पढ़े, या अलविदाई मिसरा पेश कर रहा हूँ, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, काज़िम तुम भी हाजत रवाए आलम हो, हैदरियत काज़िम मोहकम हो, तुम दुआए जनाबे ज़हरा से पुरसदारे जनाबे आदम हो, तू सातवां मुश्किल कुशा नूरे जनाबे सैयदा, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम, या मूसा-ए काज़िम। या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या हुसैन। वो आबिदे बीमार था, मिलके वो आबिदे बीमार था, वो आबिदे बीमार था, वो आबिदे बीमार था, चलने से जो लाचार था, और शाम का बाजार था, और शाम का बाजार था, और मुस्तफ़ा की बेटियां है ज़ैनब, है शाम, है ज़ैनब, है शाम, है शाम, है बराए ताजील ज़हूर इमाम ज़माना बाज़ बुलंद तर सलावात।
زيارة مخصوص إمام موسى بن جعفر الكاظم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا ولي الله، السلام عليك يا حجة الله، السلام عليك يا نور الله في ظلمات الأرض، السلام عليك يا من يد الله في شأنه. أتيتك زائرا عارفا بحقك، معاديا لأعدائك، مواليا لأوليائك، فاشفع لي عند ربك يا مولاي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك، علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا حجة الله، يا ابن الحسن، يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت رسول الله جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرزك طوعا وتمتعوا بها طويلا، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.
Brothers, you are requested to take your seats as quickly as possible so that the tabarruk can be served. Ahsant. Brothers, I've been requested by the volunteers to request you all to be seated so that tea can be served. Please be seated so that tea can be served. Ahsant. Brothers, as you are all seated, while we are waiting for Tabarruk, there has been a request for munajat, as it's Imam Musa-e-Kadhim Shahadat. So one of the uncles will be reciting munajat. Can we please have a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad? Thank you so much.
Okay, वांदे मौलाना जो वांदे ने सारो ahsan चल रुके हैं बराए खुशनुदी बाबुल हवाइज इमाम मूसा काज़िम बावाज़ बुलंद सलावत या मूसा काज़िम हमें आफत से छुड़ाओ बहरे हसन हुसैन मुसीबत से छुड़ाओ या मूसा काज़िम हमें आफत से छुड़ाओ बहरे हसन हुसैन मुसीबत पहले है तलब इज़्ने दुखूल मूसा काज़िम करते हैं सलाम की जो कबूल मूसा काज़िम मतलब हमारा होवे हुसूल मूसा काज़िम ना फेर ना दर से मलूल मूसा काज़िम या मूसा काज़िम हमें आफत से छुड़ाओ बहरे हसन हुसैन बाबुल हवाइज आपका लक़ब है आशिकार थोड़े ही बरस पहले का है किस्सा यादगार बीमार शफा पाके गए आपसे हर बार वल्लाह बड़ी रहम की है आपकी सरकार या मूसा काज़िम आफत से छुड़ाओ बहरे हसन हुसैन मुसीबत आए हैं दर पे आपके हैं आए हैं दर पे आपके और करते हैं सवाल तुम ही मेरे हाजत रवा हो फातिमा के लाल सामान गैब कर दो मेरे वास्ते फिलहाल टल जाए जिसे सारा मेरा रंज और मलाल। या मूसी-ए-काज़िम बहरे हसन हुसैन मुसीबत से छुड़ाओ। खालिक ने तुम्हें खल्क का मुख्तार बनाया, बटके हुए को आप ही ने राह बताया। हम भी है परेशान, करो लुत्फ का साया, और दीजियो जो आपसे हम मांगने आए। या मूसा-ए-काज़िम हमें आफत से छुड़ाओ, बहरे हसन हुसैन मुसी। या रब हमें नसीब हो ज़ियारत हुसैन की, मरने से पहले देख लें तुरबत हुसैन की। सब मिलके पढ़ें। या रब हमें नसीब हो ज़ियारत हुसैन की, मरने से पहले देख लें तुरबत हुसैन की। वक़्ते फिशार पाए हम नुसरत हुसैन की, देखें अंधेरी कब्र में सूरत हुसैन की। या मूसा-ए-काज़िम हमें आफत से छुड़ाओ, बहरे हसन हुसैन मुसीबत से छुड़ाओ। बराए खुशनुदी इमाम ज़माना बाआवाज़ बुलंद सलवात। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व आले मुहम्मद व अज्जिल